When Democrats were here on this stage 2 nights ago, one thing that they talked about a lot in terms of reducing costs is shared services, is regional school districts, is other forms of consolidation like that. Mr. Chitterelli, do you agree that that should be a focus on reducing costs?
We have 564 towns. We have 600 school districts. There's no state in the country that has that many governmental jurisdictions. And certainly it's one of the reasons why property taxes are high. But the primary reason why property taxes are high is because the way we distribute $15 billion in state aid to our schools. 50% of that aid goes to 24 districts. I don't think that's fair. It results in a cost per pupil that's off the charts. Again, as I said earlier, you're not going to justify to me why some districts have a cost per pupil of $35,000 to $40,000 when the state average is somewhere around $15,000 or $16,000 per student. So as governor, if people at the local level want to regionalize or want to consolidate, as Princeton Borough and Princeton Township did when I represented them in the state legislature, I will do everything in my power to incentivize them to go through with the plan. And we did just that for Princeton Borough and Princeton Township. We paid for, the state did, all the one-time upfront costs that are associated with the regionalization consolidation. So can we use more regionalization consolidation? Yes, but that is a local decision. We are a home rule state.
Jack loves consolidation. I'm old enough to remember when Jack Chitterelli tried to consolidate the police departments in Somerset County. Perhaps that's why you're not that popular in Somerset County these days, Jack, because the police chiefs and the officers rejected that plan, knowing it would jeopardize and compromise public safety. Now, I can tell you this, you mentioned Princeton Township, Princeton Borough. I was one of the very few Republicans to vote no on that consolidation. Why? Because I said, guys, you don't understand the hidden fees here. Your taxes will go up. We consolidated. What happened? Every year since, my property taxes have gone up. So it did not have the intended impact. This is the problem with politicians, where they talk a good game and throw out a talking point that makes sense, but then when you look at the results, we're paying more every single year. We're not going to force any district to consolidate.
Shared service is a great idea. But you better be really careful. When John Corzine wanted to go to county schools, you want to move the Board of Education from your town to the county seat? Well, let me tell you, the farther that government is away from you, the less voice you have. I actually have a bill that the public should speak down in the legislature. How are you going to reach your assemblyman or senator? You're not permitted to do that. You have to go to the county to talk about your child's welfare in a school. I love the fact that local parents are involved in local education and on their local Board of Education. Knowing that, we also know that shared services make some sense. But there is a real threat to move the people who run a school far away from the students and the parents. Big mistake.
Joe, if I may, real quick, let me say this. I've yet to see, and I've served as a county commissioner, and I've been involved with what goes on here in New Jersey, and I've yet to see the real value in the county superintendent and the county superintendent's office. So that's something that's going to be under serious consideration under my governorship, whether or not that is worthy to continue. I don't see the value in the county superintendents.
Micah.
Senator Bramnick, you've talked about segregation and the potential settlement of the state lawsuit. But that's not something that state officials may get discretion on, right? If the court comes down and if the court says our schools have to be desegregated, what are you going to do?
Well, they've already said in the Latino Network case that our schools are segregated. That decision's been made. Now, and this is something that's really under the radar, the state of New Jersey, Phil Murphy's administration, is trying to negotiate with the plaintiffs in that case to determine how do we desegregate the schools. What I do say is that people who buy a house in a certain town, a block from a school, do not want next week to have that child bused 10 miles away. I will make sure, and this is a really serious priority, I want to make sure that when you pick a school district, you go to that school. This is one of the major pieces of litigation that threatens your ability to pick a school. Now, is there a way to desegregate the schools? Well, that's what's being negotiated now. But in my judgment, I put a constitutional amendment in that you have the absolute right to stay in your school, in your district, and that should be passed by the legislature. No busing 10, 15 miles away. I was bused in Plainfield, but I was bused within Plainfield to to Washington School in 6th grade as part of a desegregation plan set by the United States Supreme Court. That works well. But moving children 10 or 15 miles to satisfy the Supreme Court decision, I will stand and fight that.
Jack Ciattarelli.
Mike, as governor, I will appoint conservative judges to the Superior Court and to the state Supreme Court. The next governor will have the opportunity to do 2 new state Supreme Court justices, one of which is the Chief Justice. But here and now, my job is to get our schools performing as soon as possible, because what's going on is criminal in terms of letting down these children and these families. And the way to do that is by changing the public school curriculum. The way to do that is providing school choice. In Phil Murphy's 8 years in office, nearly 8 years, he's only approved 1 charter school. Look at the success that the Chris Christie approved charters have had in places like Camden and Newark. And take into account that every time one of those charters is opening, when we have a lottery, the demand exceeds the supply. And it's heartbreaking that some people go home to a failing school system. What I can do on day 1 is ensure school choice with vouchers. Within year 1, we can have charter schools. We've got to get these schools performing while these things go through the courts. But what's taking place right now is terrible and not in the best interest of students or their families.
Bill Spade.
Maybe Jack has forgotten from his time in the legislature. He's not going to get a voucher program in without the legislature, and we're not going to have a Republican state Senate because they're not up until 2027. So what we're going to have to do is what I said back at the beginning of the conversation talking about affordability, and that is use the power of the executive to go in and fix our failed public schools in the cities, Newark, Patterson, Irvington, et cetera. When 9 out of 10 kids can't perform at grade level, that's a failed system. When you've got parents, 4,000 strong right now in Newark, on a list to get to a charter school, it is incumbent upon the incoming governor to release those kids, let them get into the charter school. We're going to start working during the transition from November 5th through January 20th to bring in that capital investment that we need to get these charter schools going so that on day 1, on January 20th, 2026, those kids can get out of that failed school and into a school that's going to give them an education that they deserve.
I tell you, day 1 is going to be very busy because these guys were saying everything's happening day 1. I got to tell you something. That's going to be one busy day down in Trenton.